What?
What's your name?
Ruby? Ruby Sunday?
Hello, Ruby Sunday. And it's a Sunday right now. That's a coincidence. I'm the doctor.
His name has been set, and set, and set apart. And his one true name forevermore is the Rani.
And Melanie, we meet again.
I was the best.
Okay, let's say best male, but don't tell the others.
Come back to the Nerdy Grail, and now it has actually been a week since Ncuti Gatwa officially regenerated, leaving our screen, saying goodbye to the era of the 15th Doctor, and saying hello to the next era of the show, or whatever that might be, whether it's with Billy Piper, or who knows what will happen. But one thing's for certain, Ncuti Gatwa has left the screens, people. And can I just say, it's been an interesting era, but that is exactly what this video is about. I want to do a complete era discussion with you all about the 15th Doctor's era, talking about, you know, Ncuti from when he was first announced, all the way up to obviously his departure. We'll discuss all sorts of things. We'll go through articles. We'll discuss the seasons. We'll discuss the positives, the negatives. We'll discuss him as a doctor himself and how he compares to other doctors. We're just going to do a big old discussion on all things Ncuti Gatwa, all things 15th Doctor, to see whether his era was truly fulfilled or not. Because now that I've gone back to reflect upon it, I think it is probably one of the most wasted eras of the show of all time, if I'm being perfectly honest. So much potential. There were so many good ideas that were just not followed through or rushed. You know, legacy characters I'm also going to discuss as well. People like Sutek and Omega and the Rani. You know, how they were finally brought back. You know, RTD listening to the fans on what they want, but then just, I don't think, fully delivering, and so spoiling it a bit. And I just think Ncuti deserved better. If I'm honest, he deserved a lot better, because he's a fantastic actor. I'm going to put that out there now in this video, because it might sound a bit more of a rant, and it sounds like more like I'm slating him. I'm not at all. I think Ncuti Gatwa is a fantastic actor and does brilliant, and he did fine for what he was given, but what he was given wasn't exactly the best, and I think we can all admit that. There was a lot of flops this last season, and even in season 1 as well. It was a very inconsistent era. But I think the best place to start is obviously when he was first announced as the Doctor. So we're going to go back, we're going to have a look at that video, that announcement video, and the article that followed, and just have a bit of a discussion on it to begin with. So let's start our 15th Doctor discussion era video. Okay, so we're on the BBC News website, and like I said, I think this is the best place really to start. You know, Ncuti Gatwa, BBC names actor as the next Doctor Who star. And you can see the date when this was posted as well, the 8th of May, 2022. So obviously this was during Jodie's final little hurrah with her specials of Eve of the Daleks, Legend of the Sea Devils, I think was the most recent one at the time. And obviously she was going to regenerate in The Power of the Doctor in October. So obviously, and even says in the article after here, actor Ncuti Gatwa will take over from Jodie Whittaker as the star of Doctor Who, the BBC has announced, which obviously, as we know, that doesn't fully come to fruition, does it? Because obviously we have the 14th Doctor in between, played by David Tennant. But go to show this date, though, straight away, though. Like I said, 8th of May 2022. You know, and at the time of recording this video, it is the 8th of June 2025. We are talking literally only just over 3 years, but remember when Ncuti actually did appear on our screen? He didn't appear on our screen until December of 2023. So think how short Ncuti's era actually is if you want to count it as when he started on screen. But I'm going to do a whole section of the video about how short his era is compared to other Doctors. But let's just take a look at this video and give some thoughts on it. What Russell and Ncuti said at the beginning of the era.
How long have you been sitting on this particular nugget, and are you feeling excited, nervous? Tell us what's going through your head.
Feeling all of the above. I've known since about February this year, so it's been tricky trying to keep this under wraps because I've got a very big mouth. But
and you've got to feel for Ncuti as well. Like it is for a lot of actors, especially if you know all about Doctor Who. It is probably one of the best roles you could possibly have. So I feel really sorry for Ncuti, to be perfectly honest. And I bet he was really excited to be part of this family, but little did he know in the future it was going to be a very tricky road ahead.
Yeah, we done it. We did it. It feels amazing. It feels really amazing, and it's a true honor. This role is an institution, and it's so iconic, and it means a lot to so many people, including myself. And so it makes everyone feel seen as well. It's something that everyone can enjoy. So I feel very grateful to have had the baton handed over, and I'm gonna try to do my best.
Have you always been a big Doctor Who fan? Anyone that you particularly want to model yourself on, or of course do your own thing as well?
I'm definitely gonna do my own thing.
And yeah, I definitely think he did do his own thing because, I mean, you can see like the energy of previous Doctors in him, because obviously everyone goes on about how wired Ncuti is, and he is one of the more energetic Doctors. But we've had plenty of those. Matt Smith was very energetic. Patrick Troughton from the classic series was very energetic. There's lots of Doctors who have that bubbly energy, and I think he was portraying that, but he did it in his own little unique way. But he was very different to other Doctors. He seemed a lot more emotional than a lot of other Doctors. Even rivaling some of the more emotional ones, such as like the original David Tennant in the 10th Doctor's era. But yeah, I can't really fault him on how he played the Doctor per se. I would say he did well for the most part. You could see Doctor characteristics in him.
Definitely. I mean, they're all amazing. You can't pick. You cannot pick. Yeah, a fan of Doctor. I don't know who isn't a fan of Doctor Who. I really don't know. So yeah, very excited to join the family.
And Russell, what was it about Ncuti that made you think he is the person for the part?
Yeah, he is talent. Talent, don't listen. Talent. It was the most blazing audition. It was our last audition. It was our very last one. We thought we had someone, and then in he came and stole it. And genuinely, I watched Sex Education, loved his work, didn't quite know what we were going to get until I was in the room. And meeting you since Ncuti, it's just going to be a joy. I'm properly thrilled. It's going to be a blazing future.
Oh, that final comment right at the end, though, stings, doesn't it? I can truly see that this is going to be a blazing future. It's a very short-lived future, and one that is full of controversy, one that is full of, behind-the-scenes arguments or behind-the-scenes issues, clearly, because obviously by the end of season 1, obviously Millie Gibson bowed out as the first official, as the official first companion for the Ncuti Gatwa Doctor era, due to lots of things that apparently went on behind the scenes, people not being very happy, all sorts, and it wasn't really as smooth as what RTD thought it was going to be. It did seem to parallel, and especially now when you think about it with Ncuti leaving after such a short span of time, and leaving so suddenly, because you've got to remember, seasons 1 and 2 were filmed practically back to back, so Ncuti technically had filmed all of his last proper scenes, apart from the reshoots, like over a year ago, really. So Ncuti's been technically gone as the Doctor for a very long time already. So, he rivals some of the other Doctors to be like the shortest lived Doctor. But he's had a lot of stuff going on in his era. And like I said, even before the era started, there were so many changes that Russell made that fans were not, overly keen on. And we're going to have a little look at some more of those right now. So I think another big one we need to talk about, and I've got it right here. We've got to talk about the changes that were made to the sonic screwdriver and how Russell even contradicts himself in his own era. So stay tuned. We're going to take another look at another article, and we're going to see how he did end up contradicting himself on the sonic screwdriver. Okay, so now we are here talking about the redesign of the sonic screwdriver, which, can I just say, was ridiculous, if I'm being perfectly honest. This isn't a sonic screwdriver. This is a TV controller or, a computer mouse. Let's be real, this isn't a sonic screwdriver. I don't care what they say. It's not a sonic screwdriver. Nobody thinks it's a sonic screwdriver. And we're also going to show why Russell's reasons for changing this were absolutely ridiculous in the first place. So obviously we've got the article here, which was posted on April 30th, 2024. RTD wanted sonic screwdriver changed because he was worried it looked too much like a gun before. How does it look like a gun? I've got here, this is the 4th Doctor's sonic screwdriver from the classic series. I'm guessing what he's trying to imply is obviously because in the 9th and 10th Doctor's eras, and 11th, you know, the New Who era, they would hold the screwdriver like that, pointing it at things, okay? But can I just say that it was really RTD who made that a thing? Most of the time in the classic series, they would hold it straight up and point it like that. They wouldn't actually be pointing it deadpan like that. It was more an upright position. So it was more so RTD who made it look more like a gun and used more like a gun. So I'm really confused as to why he did this. That was you, RTD. You started that trend properly. All the sonic screwdrivers, mostly in the classic series, weren't used as a gun, apart from the Master's tissue compression eliminator. But he's a villain. So I don't really understand. But if we keep going further down, so that's a picture of Ncuti where in a video he was demonstrating the new sonic screwdriver. Ncuti Gatwa's sonic screwdriver is easily the most radical redesign of the Doctor's gadget yet. With some fans likening it to a remote control, it is a remote control. It now turns out there was an interesting reason for the distinct look. According to an article in Rolling Stone, Russell T Davies was concerned that the classic Sonic fans all know and love resembled a gun too much. The main extract from the article is, the Doctor's trusty sonic screwdriver has been redesigned to resemble a remote control or a flip phone because Davies was worried that the old Sonic looked too much like a gun, potentially encouraging kids to pretend to shoot at one another. As we can see, there is no direct quote from Davies, so we'll have to take the article's word for it for now, but it appears he was quite serious, and it wouldn't be the first time this new era has seen a controversial change from him for curious reasons. Yeah, and it turned out that that was the actual reason, and also, yeah, in terms of changing stuff for other reasons, I know like the change of the Doctor's outfit, which I did in a discussion video before, where he wanted David to not wear Jodie's outfit, was because he thought it would look silly to wear her outfit and it would be an insult to the feminine culture and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, that's just ridiculous. And I made a comment about, like, what about male cosplayers at Comic Cons who want to dress as 13? Are we insulting them? He has just bizarre reasons for doing things. I just don't understand. But the sonic screwdriver change was ridiculous. And I'm going to also put a picture up on screen right now. RTD obviously saying that the sonic screwdriver looks like a gun. What is it that the 15th Doctor does in order to defeat Omega at the halfway point of the reality war? How does he hold the Vindicator, people? Yeah, he holds it like a gun, like a proper weapon. So RTD, what are you doing? You are contradicting yourself. I just don't understand. It is absolutely bizarre and intense. And keep in mind, this was on the 30th of April, right? So this was, so just before, Ncuti had only just appeared as the Doctor, you know. He was appeared in The Giggle, and he had done Church on Ruby Road. So before his proper era has started, he's had so many different controversies. But there is one more major change that I want to talk about before we jump into Ncuti's era, you know, talk about the seasons and whether they were good or bad. And that major change is something that I don't think is going to come back again, and it better not ever come back again. But I'm, of course, talking about bi-generation.
Bi-generation. I have bi-generated. There's no such thing. Bi-generation is supposed to be a myth, but look at me.
Bi-generated, evidently.
How did you? You're both the same person.
Unfortunately, yes. Our name is Varani.
Boy, yes, bi-generation. Such a fun and quirky concept that everybody adores and thinks that should remain in Doctor Who. Yeah, definitely not. I was never a fan of bi-generation. It grew on me a little bit as time went on, you know, but if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm really glad we didn't see a bi-regeneration when 15 became, I don't know, what are we going to call Billy Piper's character? I'll call her 16 for now, but I don't think she is 16. So I'm glad that when 15 became 16, we didn't see a bi-generation, we saw a regeneration. Because I didn't like bi-generation. And when the Rani did it in Interstellar Song Contest, I couldn't believe they went down that route. I couldn't believe that the leaker that I saw was accurate for that one. I was hoping and praying that wasn't the case. But yeah, it's just a gimmick. It's just a gimmick that RTD wanted to implement in order to put his stamp on his next era of the show. Because every showrunner in the modern era of the show feels they have to do something big and dramatic, otherwise no one will remember their era. No, can't you just focus on making just good and clean stories as opposed to just doing something to just annoy the people? And I remember in interviews and articles at the time, RTD saying, or going along the lines of practically saying, I've got something here and I've done something that I know is going to cause controversy and I know is going to annoy the fans. Why do you want to annoy the fans? It's the fans that are keeping the show alive. Why do you want to annoy them? And why would you do this for a new actor who's coming in? Which is the core problem that I have with bi-generation, which I'll get onto now. So I'm mostly talking about Ncuti's bi-generation, so when 14 became 15, as opposed to the Mrs. Flood into the Rani one. But I'm just putting that one in here as well, because obviously there's only 2 bi-generations. So the reason why I think this didn't help Ncuti's era, the bi-generation, is because the whole point of regeneration is you're supposed to say farewell to the previous Doctor. You get that one last hurrah, you say goodbye, and it allows the new person to step into their shoes and take on the mantle, be the new lead. You know, the old one's not truly forgotten, but it gives the new one time to shine. However, the problem with the bi-generation, and I'll also say about how they could have fixed it as well, is, okay, firstly, bi-generation doesn't make sense. And in the clips that you obviously just saw as well, it just doesn't seem to make much sense. They don't even have a rhyme or a reason. Like I said, in The Giggle, during the bi-generation, the scene follows where Kate and Shirley are asking how the hell did that happen, and the Doctor can't even explain it. The Doctor says, oh, it's bi-generation. It's a myth, you know, it's not supposed to be a thing, but here we are, it's happened. It's like, that's not an explanation. You know, I mean, sure, maybe you could say that it was the toy maker using the galvanic beam and shot directly into the Doctor and it somehow split him somehow, you know, maybe, I guess. I know in The Devil's Core, the Doctor says a line along the lines of it tore his soul in half fighting the toy maker, but still, that's vague. And then the problem then you've got then is, Mrs. Flood's bi-generation later down the line. They don't really explain it. The only thing you could maybe explain is that apparently the machine that they're using to revitalize people one of the guys said there was a side effect. So maybe it was the side effect of that caused the bi-generation. It still doesn't make sense. So I hate the bi-generation because it keeps the original incarnation before the successor around. Meaning that people aren't looking at Ncuti. People are still focusing like, oh my goodness, David Tennant hasn't gone yet. You know, and is Ncuti actually the true Doctor? Or are we going to have adventures now with David? Oh, I can't wait to see David come back. You know, no one was focusing on Ncuti. I remember watching it with my parents at the time, and they were just more pleased that David Tennant had stuck around, and Ncuti was not really on their radar, and that's not fair for a new Doctor. You know, and also, you know, got the thing of now you've got multiple David Tennants still alive and well. It's like, come on. It's like, why would you do that? You're handicapping your new guy. It's like, why would you do that? So bi-generation is silly in that aspect. You know, and if you can't explain it, then you shouldn't implement something like that in the show. If you can't give us a proper reason, like I thought in Reality War and stuff, they were going to give us a proper explanation of why bi-generation was a thing, but we're still none the wiser on it, really, and the fact that it's probably never going to come back again is just pointless. It is just pointless. It was just a gimmick that RTD wanted to implement so he could have a new thing. You know, like Stephen Moffat had the weird hybrid in Series 9, which was a stupid thing. Didn't like the hybrid. You know, obviously Chris Chibnall implemented the Timeless Child thing, which, you know, I'm still not massive over, but I've grown on that. That's fine. I can let that one slide. So obviously RTD, bi-generation. Just had to do bi-generation. Why? No real reason. But like I said, it doesn't do Ncuti any favours. And giving the 14th Doctor his own TARDIS, yeah, it was just too silly. It didn't start Ncuti off on the best foot. And I think that was the first like little mistake that was made in Ncuti's era that then hampered him going forward. Because I remember there was, every time the finale would crop up, people would say, well, where's 14? Is 14 going to crop up? I mean, he's even referenced in Legend of Ruby Sunday, you know, when Ncuti's 15th Doctor is talking to Rose Noble, saying, you know, how's your grandfather, or uncle, sorry, how's your uncle? And we know that 14 was referred to as uncle, so yeah, that's a problem. If you're going to constantly just keep talking about the previous incarnation, when your current incarnation's standing right there, that's a problem. So I'm not a huge fan of Bi-Generation. I don't think it should have been done at all. It was ridiculous. A bit like the whole, you know, thing with the sonic screwdriver. Just silly things, RTD. And I don't know why you did this, because it's really, really hurt the show. But speaking of Ncuti's era, I think now we should talk about Ncuti's whole era now. We should break it down. So I'll break this down into a couple of parts. So in the next part, we're going to talk about Series 1, the positives of Series 1, the negatives of Series 1, and Ncuti's impact as a Doctor. Then we'll move on to Series 2 and talk about that. And then we'll come together at the end and summarise this long, lengthy discussion video on the 15th Doctor's era. So sit back, relax, because now we're going to dive into Ncuti's era, starting with Season 1.
See the next thing. And the next, and the next. Have you ever felt so alive? And that's just the beginning.
Good old Season 1 from 2024. Yeah, you know, a first season of a brand new Doctor, you know, with Ncuti Gatwa, you know, you would imagine that, and it happened in the past, you know, with Christopher Eccleston, with David Tennant, with Matt Smith, you know, Peter Capaldi, Jodie Whittaker even, you know, you spend your first season getting to know your new Doctor. You know, you get to see them post-regeneration, trying to find themselves again, you know, trying to get used to this new personality, find out what works for them, what doesn't work for them, you know, how they build relationships with people, both old and new, you know, how they take on fighting monsters, where they prefer to go, the way they prefer to do things. You know, there's lots of little things, the way they dress as well, which we'll get onto that as well. But, yeah, Season 1 felt really odd, looking back on it. It's not the worst season out there, but at the same time, it would definitely be quite low on my list, if I'm honest. It's not the best season, if I'm honest. And in particular, it's not the best season for a brand new Doctor. Because, you know, Ncuti Gatwa, you know, he has only got a small number of episodes. Okay, because I was going to mention this earlier, but I'll mention this now. He's only got, technically, 18 episodes on the show. He's got 8 episodes in Season 1, 8 episodes in Season 2, which makes 16. Then he's got 2 Christmas specials, The Church on Ruby Road and Joy to the World, which takes you to 18. Some people like to classify 19 stories because some people like to put the fact that he was in the last 20 minutes of The Giggle on the list. So technically, I suppose you could say 19. But in terms of him being the core and only Doctor, he's only got 18 episodes, which is a very small number of episodes, especially when you compare it to some previous Doctors. And also the character development. You know, he's had 18 episodes, and yet you never really felt like this Doctor went through all the emotional baggage that other Doctors go through. You know, the sadness, the happiness, the anger. We started to see the darkness in Season 2. You didn't see that really at all in Season 1. Season 1 Doctor felt a bit too happy-go-lucky, if I'm perfectly honest. And the stories were very lackluster. There wasn't really any interesting villains, if I'm perfectly honest. Because let's really break down Season 1. So obviously you've got The Church on Ruby Road, which introduces the Doctor to Ruby Sunday. You know, and our core villains are these goblins who are stealing a baby, you know. And you've got everything that's going on with Ruby. And it sets up the plotline for Ruby. Because the core plotline of Series 1 is, why does it snow around Ruby Sunday? And who is Ruby's mother? There's a fair few other plot lines that go on, like the TARDIS making weird noises, who's this random woman that keeps appearing in every single episode. I'm not talking about Mrs. Flood this time. I'm talking about Susan Twist, or Susan Triad, as she's known by the end of the series. Yeah, this random woman keeps popping up. She appeared once in the 60th anniversary specials, but she's in every single episode, whether it's, a voice cameo, a background character, even a painting in one of the episodes. So who is she? There's too many plot threads going on, and it sort of distracts from the episodes. And obviously you've only got 8 episodes, and the episode lengths are usually about 45 minutes still. They never really increase the episode time, which they should have done. You've got less episodes, make them longer. Don't keep them the same length or shorten them. You need that character development, and you need the plot to keep going. But yeah, Church on Ruby Road, you got the goblins. They were all right in their design, but they were a bit lackluster. Then you got Space Babies, probably one of the worst openings to a series you could possibly have. The Space Babies, watching Reality War and Wish World, turns out to be one of the most relevant stories of all time in Ncuti's era because of Poppy the Space Baby. But yeah, Space Babies is absolute garbage. Horrible first story. Pacing is absolutely abysmal. The Space Babies themselves are really distracting to watch. The Doctor is all over the place. It's just a mess of a story, if I'm honest. An absolute mess. And that is why the second episode, The Devil's Cord, I truly believe, and it might have even been confirmed, I can't remember now, but I believe The Devil's Cord was meant to be later in the series. I think it was meant to be like episode 5 or 6, just before the finale, because obviously you've got the actual best villain of series 1, in my opinion, realistically, Maestro, one of the pantheon, like the god of music and the god of sound, that sort of thing. Maestro was really, really good, played by Jinx Monsoon, fantastic, loved it. But at the end of the episode, when Jinx Monsoon's character of Maestro is defeated, they say that the one who waits which is also a plotline of the series as well, is almost here. Which I feel like, because the one who waits is in the finale, that is why that should have come at the end, not in episode 2, because then he's not almost here, because we've still got like another 4 or 5 weeks before we meet the one who waits. So yeah, there was a mistake there. But Devil's Cord is alright. Boom, the Doctor gets stuck on a landmine for the whole episode. It was a pretty good episode written by Stephen Moffat. I quite like that one, It made Ruby have to think and try and be without the Doctor for a bit. Then you've got 73 Yards, which is a Doctor Light episode, which is a terrible thing to do for a first season. It's not, you can do it, because like season 2 with David Tennant's first season did it with Love and Monsters and stuff like that. But the problem is they still had the 13 episode length, whereas this is 8 episodes. You shouldn't do it when you've got very few episodes anyway. So 73 Yards, the Doctor vanishes and Ruby's got to try and find out what's going on. Then you've got Dot and Bubble with the racists and the giant slugs. Interesting concept for an episode as well, talking about how we're all plugged into this computer and we can't do anything for ourselves, showing how social media and how technology is making us less independent and we need all that support. It's interesting, but still not great. Then you got Rogue, which introduces the new Captain Jack Harkness replacement, pretty much. Let's be real, he is pretty much Captain Jack. And another love interest for the Doctor, which is going to go absolutely nowhere now that Ncuti's not in the show. I guarantee it. Pointless. And then you've got the finale, which had like some weird cosplayers as well, these animal bird cosplayers. And then the finale was the return of Sutek, which Sutek was done so dirty. He looks ridiculous. He's this giant CGI dog-like creature, which, can work and, isn't as bad as what they do to Omega in season 2, but yeah, they did Sutek dirty. I'm glad they got Gabriel Wolf back to voice Sutek, but he was just so poor. If I'm honest. Not Gabriel Wolf, but what they did to Sutek. He gets defeated by being put on a leash and dragged and flung around like a ragdoll through the time vortex. And what happens with this big plot line of Ruby's mother? Nothing. Absolutely nothing comes of that. She turns out to be absolutely no one. So let's talk about these big plot threads, like I said, for season 1. These overarching themes and where they lead to. Well, Susan Twist appearing in every episode. Turns out she's just a henchman of Sutek in the end. That Sutek just put all along the Doctor's time stream in order so that when he's fully awakened and activated, he can activate all of his little Susan twists and send his dust of death around the universe, killing everyone at the same time. So she was pointless, really. Ruby's mother turns out to be absolutely no one, just a normal woman. You know, it's supposed to be like, we all thought she was someone really important, but actually the most important thing is that she was just a regular person. And no, you didn't build it that way, so don't try and gaslight us here. So that was a real disappointment. The One Who Waits turning out to be Sutek, yeah, fair enough, whatever, that was fine. I love Sutek, I adore Sutek, but he was just not done very well in this season. You know, the noises that the TARDIS make, which started in Wild Blue Yonder, that was linked to Sutek apparently, which is ridiculous, by the way. Sutek being on board the TARDIS since the Pyramids of Mars back in the Fourth Doctor's era, I refuse to believe that. That is ridiculous. So again, that's just RTD just pulling stuff out of his arse. So I'm not a big fan of that. Yeah, and just the season ends, it brings back other characters such as Rose Noble comes back. You know, you got Bonnie Langford as Mel, which I love Bonnie Langford as Mel, don't be wrong, she's pretty good in this story. But Rose Noble doesn't do anything. They bring back the Vlinks. You've got Kate Lethbridge Stewart, which I love Kate, but I'm sorry, but Kate doesn't do anything in season 1. She's even killed off at the start of Empire of Death. They're like, nah, we don't want you anymore, Kate, just go. You know, because they didn't have anything for her to do. She comes back, obviously, but which is another thing. You don't kill off all your core characters that we know you're not just going to kill off in that way, because it makes your ending so predictable. And that's the problem with this series, just lackluster and predictable. And Ncuti never had time to grow as a character. There was no true Doctor moments in terms of, you know, he never had that darkness that the Doctor normally has. He just goes through the series being this happy-go-lucky guy, you know, just having fun in time and space. He never got the fire or the anger that you would see in previous Doctors, or even in concepts they introduced in New Who, like the Time Lord Victorious. You could never see him doing stuff like what the 10th Doctor does to the Rachnos Empress in The Runaway Bride. You could never see what he does to the Family of Bloods, you know, what the 12th Doctor does and how he threatens a Shielder in Series 9 due to Clara's death, you know. You can never picture that with Ncuti in Season 1, and that is a problem. It shows that he doesn't have much depth to his character, and that was why he was difficult to connect with in Season 1. He does get better in Season 2, which I will come on to in a minute, but yeah, so Season 1 overall, there was no real standout moments for me. I think the best parts of Season 1 for me was Devil's Cord, Boom, and initially Sutek's reveal at the end of Legend of Ruby Sunday, but then they did him dirty then at the end of that episode, so I'm not a huge fan of Season 1. You know, and having 2 Doctor Light episodes back-to-back, because Dot and Bubble straight after 73 Yards is a Doctor Light episode, having 2 episodes be Doctor Light in an 8-episode series, your first series with this new Doctor, is a bad move to make. I know it was due to filming issues with Ncuti and his previous projects and stuff, but you've got to get the timing better, RTD. If you're hiring these big-name actors, you need to think about these things. But yeah, so Season 1 was a little bit of a train wreck. But let's now move on to Season 2 and see if it got better from there.
I promised that I would keep you safe.
You won't.
I can. I will. I do. I will take you home. That is a promise.
Oh, Season 2, the most recent season of Doctor Who, and what might be the last season of Doctor Who for at least a decent while, let's be honest, because there's no real plans at the moment with Series 3. We've got no real true indication of when it is going to potentially come back. I know we've had little bits of rumours and stuff, but who actually knows? And everything that's gone on now with Billy Piper, who knows what the future of the show holds. But Season 2, I would say overall it's better than Season 1, but I would still say it lacks in development. Everything feels a bit rushed. Things feel just thrown together. Things feel changed just for the sake of it. And obviously having to do reshoots for Ncuti to end up departing at the end of this series when originally he wasn't going to, you know, means that the whole course of the series ended up having to change. So the whole point of this series is you've got a new companion, Belinda Chandra, and the Doctor is trying to basically get her home because she gets abducted at the start of this series in the Robot Revolution, and the Doctor's trying to get her home, but each time he tries to get her home, he can't. Something is stopping him from getting back to May the 24th, 2025, and he has to figure out what that is. So he builds this device known as a Vindicator, which he uses it as a bit of like a fishhook or a lifeline to take him back to the present day. But each week they've got to like strengthen and boost the signal. So he puts it down, calculates it, and then takes it back into the TARDIS, and then they have a little adventure, and then they shoot off to the next part. And obviously all the while, this time round, instead of Susan Twist appearing in every episode, we've now got the return of Mrs. Flood, who appears in every single episode in one way, shape or form, be it a big cameo or a small cameo. Most of them are quite small. You know, she might be just a random person in the background who has been watching what's going on. She might interact with some of the characters, not the Doctor or Belinda, but some of the other characters from the episodes. And, you know, they have this big grand reveal at the end of the season as to who she is, a bit like they did with Susan Triad. It seemed a bit rinse and repeat, and if I'm perfectly honest as well, RTD is recycling a lot of his old materials. He's even doing it between seasons now, season 1 and 2. If you put them side by side, the way the episodes work are quite similar, let's be real, because you've got the Robot Revolution and Space Babies, which, you know, both take place, you know, in this like space area, you know, and then you've got, which start from present day as well. Then you've got The Devil's Cord and Lux, which both take place at some point in the past on Earth. Then you've got episode 3, where you've got Boom, and you've got The Well, which are both futuristic alien planet stories. You know, and then you've got episode 4, 73 Yards and Lucky Day, Doctor-like episodes that focus on the character of Ruby Sunday. Can you see a little bit of a pattern that's going on here? Episode 5 with Dot and Bubble and the story and the engine, where it focuses on race. Yeah, there is a big pattern going on here. So unfortunately, there is we've got the problem that RTD just doesn't seem to have enough creativity to change things up. And Series 2, unfortunately, doesn't exactly end in a big bang, really. Well, it ends in a bang, but in a bad one. Because, like I said, all through the series, you know, the Doctor's trying to get Belinda home. So in Lux, then the second episode, they go back in time, and they face another one of the gods for the Pantheon, Lux, the god of light, which I really like Lux. It is still probably my favourite episode of Season 2. I do really like it. I think it is a very solid episode. And I think Alan Cumming playing Mr. Ring-a-Ding is fantastic. I love that. Thought it was a fun episode. The Well is then technically a sequel to Midnight, because the Doctor returns to the planet of Midnight far, far in the future. And the Midnight entity does return, albeit a little bit different. So it was quite nice, you know, to see the return of that. Episode 4, Lucky Day, you're introduced to a character, Conrad Clark, who is like Ruby's boyfriend, but actually he was tricking her in order to get close to UNIT to try and, because he believes that UNIT is a fraud and everything that goes on in UNIT is not real. So he's trying to like call out UNIT, and he's one of those antagonists that you love to hate, and he actually comes back in the finale. And all the while you got Ruby, who's teaming up with UNIT. So you see the return of Kate, you see the return of Colonel Ibrahim, return of Shirley, although whatever happened to Lenny Rush's character, I don't know. And he never even explained that either. Episode 5, you know, the Doctor and Belinda, they land in Nigeria, and the Doctor basically goes to this barber shop that he went to all the time because he felt safe due to his new body, but something's going on, and there's this barber, this evil barber, who is like trying to power this engine, this giant spider crawling on a web, and he's using stories to do that. Then you've got the Interstellar Song Contest, which links to the Eurovision, because the Eurovision was out at that point in time. You know, this big song contest, and you've got these aliens, Kid and his partner, who are trying to take over the song contest in order to get back at the evil corporation who have done harm to their planet. So it's a bit of a revenge scheme on a mass scale. And then you have Wish World and Reality War, which is the culmination of all of Series 2, where obviously we've had the reveal that Mrs. Flood at the end of Interstellar Song Contest bi-generates and find out that she's the Rani. And then we find out that in Wish World, the Rani's teamed up with Conrad in order to bring back Omega, in order to build a new Gallifrey. And that is basically the plot line of Series 2. But they do it in such a rushed way. And let me talk about legacy characters, because it's more so apparent in this season than in Season 1. Because they destroyed the legacy characters of both the Rani and Omega in this series. The Rani, you know, this whole build-up with Mrs. Flood, only for her to bi-generate, and then Mrs. Flood to get left on the sidelines, is ridiculous. We've been following this character for 2 years. Why can't we just have her reveal herself to be the Rani, and then we get Mrs. Flood being really evil? Did we really need a new Rani? Nothing against Archie Punjabi. I think she does a fantastic job, and she's an amazing Rani. But I think you've got to pick. You either got to get rid of Mrs. Flood, which would be really disappointing, or you got to just keep Mrs. Flood, but reveal her identity. So I think having the two of them, it didn't really work for me. It just made both of them irrelevant, because it made Mrs. Flood seem like, you know, a bit of a lackey when she's still the Rani. And then the new Rani in Reality War gets eaten halfway through the episode and is gone. So then you're still left with Mrs. Flood anyway. But now you've got the question, what happens if Mrs. Flood dies? Can she die? Will she regenerate back into Archie Punjabi, or will she be someone new? What's going to happen now? I don't get it. So it was a waste of the Rani. Rani barely has any interactions. You bring back Melanie Bush. You've got Mel and the Rani. Perfect combination. But again, they have one major conversation and that is it. And then you've got Omega. Omega, oh my goodness. You know, yes, I know he's not... I mean, he is a big character. And it's mostly for the classic fans. But the thing is, they did him even more dirty than they did Sutek. And I didn't think you could do anyone as dirty as you did Sutek. Omega is just turned into this big CGI skeletal creature who doesn't even resemble Omega even a little bit. At least Sutek had slight elements of his original design. This Omega, you wouldn't even be able to tell who it is. If you just had a still image before the reveal of Omega and said, who's that? You would not say Omega. Omega would be the last character that you would say. The only thing that links to Omega is that he comes out of this tomb which has the seal of Omega on it. That's literally it. And Omega's there for 5 minutes, eats the Rani, the Doctor shoots him with the Vindicator, and then boom, Omega's gone. And that was your big climax that you were getting to? Like, come on, you solved the climax by the 30-minute mark. And it is just absolutely atrocious. Legacy characters destroyed. Characters like Kate, Mel, Rose Noble comes back again for whatever reason. I don't understand. The companion of Belinda, who we've been following all through the series, gets shoved in a vault, gets sent to the sidelines, and now she's forced to be a mother, which they try to gaslight you at the end, and they rewrite all the scenes from previous episodes of Belinda saying she needs to get home, but insert that she needs to get home for Poppy. She's got a certain time she needs to be home for Poppy, her daughter. And now she's forced to be a mother. I'm just like, I don't understand. How can you destroy a companion like that and do a companion dirty like that? It is ridiculous. And the regeneration and the themes of this series was just so reliant on the past. I know loads of reviewers have done this as well, but in the last 3 or 4 stories from, you got Story in the Engine, Interstellar Song Contest, Wish World, and Reality War. Story in the Engine, Wish World, and Reality War all have montages of the previous Doctors. And it is like, why are you hammering that home? We know who they are. Even people who are New Who fans know who they are. You need to stop relying on the past too much, Russell. And that is the biggest flaw of all, is the fact that obviously at the end, post-regeneration, the Doctor regenerates into Billie Piper. So now you've got Ncuti, who's sandwiched between David Tennant and Billie Piper. And I'm like, that's not the best thing to do, if I'm honest. And also, Russell don't really have a plan here, does he, going forward? I've seen rumours of leaks and stuff that apparently Russell, it was such a last-minute decision to bring Billie Piper back that we don't actually know why she's there. And I'm like, if that's the case, just do an open-ended regeneration. Fade to black. They were going to do that with Jodie anyway. Now's your opportunity to do it. Just fade to black. And then actually cast someone properly. Because all you're doing is you're then belittling Ncuti again, and you're belittling the integrity of the show. Because for me, season 2 ends on a whimper. The reality war is not a good finale. It's so mixed, it's so rushed. It destroys Rani, destroys Omega, you know, destroys the integrity of the show. It makes regeneration an absolute joke. You know, I just don't understand. And this whole series, again, we've not had any major villains again. Like, you had robots in Robot Revolution. You had Mr. Ring-a-Ding, who was brilliant, don't get me wrong. You had the Midnight Entity, which was alright. Yeah, the Shriek, they were okay, not the greatest. There wasn't really a proper villain in Story in the Engine. The Interstellar Song Contest was just another generic person wanted to take over, wanted revenge. And then you got the Rani, who didn't really do much, and then Omega did absolutely fuck all. I'm sorry. But I hated it. Hated it, and season 2 for me, even though it was slightly better than season 1, you know, still didn't do anything, and Ncuti still left not being given the character development that he deserved. And he had another Dr. Light story. Stop throwing in Dr. Light stories. We need more Ncuti, not less of him. You know, he had 1 or 2 good moments in this series, like his dark moment in Interstellar Song Contest, where even Susan coming back, and oh my god, Susan. I forgot to even mention Susan. Susan's been like teased all through Ncuti's era, and we find out that apparently one of the actual endings for Reality War was going to be the return of Susan watching over the Doctor while he parties it up. And they just decide to cut that. No. It's ridiculous. I'm so annoyed that they teased Susan for 2 episodes prior to Reality War. We didn't get her. I think it's an insult to the character of Susan and an insult to Carol Ann Ford. You should be ashamed of yourself. Absolutely ashamed of yourself, Russell. I'm sorry, but I've had enough. It is a breaking point for me. The 15th Doctor's era is an era that's full of wasted potential, the destruction of legacy characters, and I cannot deal with it anymore. And it is getting me to breaking point because I adore Doctor Who and I stick with it through thick and through thin. But this is really driving me now, and I know it's upset an awful lot of Doctor Who fans. But yeah, that's going to be my big discussion video on the 15th Doctor's era. I'm going to sum it up as it's wasted potential, the destruction of legacy characters, ridiculous concepts, and Ncuti deserved better. Ncuti Gatwa is a great actor and is a decent Doctor, but he deserved a lot better than what he got. Same with Christopher Eccleston. But Christopher Eccleston, I love season 1 with Christopher Eccleston. I think it is fantastic. But he deserved more time as the Doctor. And again, he was treated poorly as well. It's just not on. Ncuti Gatwa deserved better. Great actor. Would have been a really good Doctor. But he wasn't given enough time to cook. But that is going to be it for my little discussion video on the 15th Doctor's era. I hope you did enjoy this long, rambly video. If you did, please like it by giving it a thumbs up and comment down below your thoughts on the 15th Doctor's era. And subscribe if you are new. But for now, this is the Ncuti Gatwa signing off. I hope you've had an amazing day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now, everyone.